you've been collecting fragrances for long enough, chances are you have some discontinued fragrances. I definitely have my fair share of discontinued fragrances that I picked up for retail when they first came out, but I also have some that I'm looking at over here that I spent a pretty penny on just to get my nose on, just because I was so curious. I feel like as a collector, I want to try every single fragrance flanker there is out there. I know I'm the target demographic for a lot of these fragrance companies, because if something changes a little bit, I'm gonna wanna see the differences, and I wanna know if it's good enough to pick up or if it's just another cash grab. A lot of the time it is the latter. But today we're gonna be looking at some of the discontinued fragrances from my personal collection and some that I think are really fantastic. So stick around, make yourself comfortable, and let's start the video. How's it going, everyone? It's Eli with Common Sense. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're having a fantastic week and just a really chill month so far. It's springtime, the weather is definitely changing, and I know some of these I'm gonna be pulling out because they're a little bit rarer, and it's also really time for some of those warm weather fragrances. So kicking it off with a warm weather fragrance for the spring, we're taking a look at this one. This is Bvlgari's Blue. Now there are a couple flankers out there. I think there's Blue Knot, and then they also have the women's versions of this fragrance, but man, I can't think of a better floral fragrance. In fact, even though the bottle is blue and it's called Blue, this is not a blue fragrance. This is a beautiful orange blossom and neroli fragrance. So it's a little bit fougere, and it smells a little bit like a wipe. So it smells very white, floral, and I love wearing this on Easter, especially in the spring. This also has some ginger and some cardamom in here, so it has a little bit of a warm sweetness to it, but to me, this just really embodies a nice aquatic floral fragrance. And if you want something very floral, white, and just relaxing, I think this is a perfect gem. Like, I don't know why they discontinued this one, because this is just art in a bottle for me. I remember picking this one up back in the day for about $30. I blind bought it at my local Marshalls, and I remember sporting this around college, around that campus, and man, I had some good memories with this fragrance. Meeting classmates for lunch, you know, going bowling, good old study sessions, and some good memories with this stuff. It really is too bad that this one got discontinued, and that one is Bvlgari Blue. Next one we're looking at is a long discontinued fragrance that has been climbing up a lot in price recently. This one is Viktor & Rolf's Spicebomb Fresh, or Eau Fraiche, depending on if you look at the box or what's listed on the label. This one is a little bit more appropriate for the slightly warmer weather, whereas the original Spicebomb and Spicebomb Extreme are very fall and winter heavy fragrances. I guess some people like wearing them in the spring, but I would never go out wearing that, especially at this high heat. I think spring really is a good case for this one, because it definitely still has some of that warmth, and it's got some amber, it's got some black pepper, some pink pepper, but it also has a little bit of freshness from the grapefruit, and it also has a nice little bit of salty, just kind of fougere qualities to this one. It's also got a nice bit of tobacco, so it does have some of that warmth, and it has a little bit of a mossy tone to it, but I really don't find myself wearing this one all too much, and I might just have to end up decanting this one and maybe giving it away or selling it. I'm not sure yet. Like, I've tried listing this one on Mercari several times, and I end up pulling it because it's the huge bottle, it's the 5-ounce bottle, and I just haven't been able to come to terms with selling it for some reason. And I think the more that I smell this, it's definitely growing on me, and as I keep coming back to it, I just can't quite get rid of it. I remember picking this up a few years back, and since then the prices definitely have gone up, but I don't know, there's something kind of special about this one. But if you can get a decant for about 15 or 20 bucks, I think it's definitely worth it, because that's what I did right before I bought this one. And that one is Viktor & Rolf's Spicebomb Fresh. Now, one of my favorite dark bad boy fragrances is this one. This one is John Varvatos Dark Rebel. Now, there is just something so dark and mysterious about this one, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite all-time winter cold weather fragrances, so if you're gonna be out with friends or going to like outdoor concerts, definitely wear this stuff, because it is loud, it's gonna be in your face, and it just is so incredible. So on the fragrance bottle, you have this sort of rubberized twine on the outside. It almost looks like licorice, but there really isn't any licorice in it. But whenever I smell this, I get dark black leather, vanilla, rum, and cigarette smoke. So that's just what I get from this. It's very smoky, it's got that bad boy leather touch, and if you've ever been to a slightly questionable bar, it just reminds me of a dive bar, tons of people crammed together and just really enjoying an over-the-top hair metal band that's way too loud and will definitely cause some hearing damage. But man, there's something so dark and fun about this fragrance because it just reminds me of good times and hanging out with friends. And honestly, if you can pick this up for about the $70 or $80, I still would do it because I think it's still worth it. It's a beautiful fragrance and I personally think it's one of my favorites. And that one is John Varvatos Dark Rebel. These next two are actually flankers of a really timeless classic fragrance that you can still buy today for about 40 bucks. But no, these two aren't 40 bucks, they're more. The next one is Givenchy Pi Air. Now, I don't know what it is with Givenchy and pulling some of their best fragrances because Pi Air and also Pi Neo, I haven't got my nose on that one, but I've heard it's fantastic, but they just pull these really awesome Pi flankers for some reason. What I really love about this one is you still have that really nice warm and vanillic benzoin in the base. It's still very prominent across all of their flankers, but this one in particular has a little bit more of a fresh tone to it because you have some neroli and you have some ginger. So it definitely adds a little bit of energy to it and it just smells a little bit lighter and it's just beautiful the way that all of the notes are done here. I really appreciate the rosemary and the kind of medicinal lavender that they use in this. So those two give it a little bit of a green edge to it, but it just smells very light and it smells very spring appropriate. And I don't know, I just absolutely love this one. But you might be noticing that some of these are spring flankers and maybe the companies pulled them because they are not really designed for super hot weather or super cold weather. So maybe that's why. But I really just love the sweet vanillic powdery florals that are done in this one. And I think this is definitely a masterpiece, a 10 out of 10 fragrance. And that one is Givenchy Pi Air. Now this next Pi flanker is an amazing one that I actually posted a picture of around Christmas time. I love wearing this around the holidays. And I remember one time around Christmas, my cousin, she complimented this fragrance on me. And ever since then, I just like to wear it around her because I don't know, I just appreciated that she appreciated it. This fragrance is Givenchy Pi Extreme. So this fragrance is basically going to be a little bit more of a leather heavy flanker to the original Givenchy Pi. So it definitely has that benzoin, that kind of cedar woody vibe, but it has a little bit more of an animalistic sweetness to it. So the leather gives it a little bit of that animalistic tone, and I think it just still has that beautiful ambery warmth to it. So it kind of radiates off your skin, and I think it smells a little bit sweeter, but maybe a little bit more manly than the last one. That one was a little bit more floral, and this one I feel like just adds some more of that leather and a little bit of that dark sweet twist, and it smells a little bit more boozy, so you're gonna have some more of that dark kind of cognac and leather in here. But I really like how this one smells. And this bottle definitely looks very similar to the original Givenchy Pi, but of course the juice is a lot darker, kind of reflecting some of the more dark qualities in this one. So I still got a lot of juice on this one, so I'm gonna be wearing more of this, especially when it cools down. Might be waiting a while, but this one is Givenchy Pi Extreme. Now this next fragrance I don't own a full bottle of. I do have one of their travel atomizers, but it's an official one, and I wanted to just include this one just because. This one is Tom Ford's Noir Anthracite. So haven't smelled the original Noir. I've definitely smelled Noir Extreme and the new Noir Extreme Parfum. At least it's semi-new. I know, I think it came out last year. But man, there's something magical about this stuff. It smells very dark, it's woody, it's got quite a bit of spice, and it just smells very, very earthy. So you have that dark ebony wood in this, and it just gives it a nice, rich, warm, earthy soil tincture to it. And I think there's a little bit of clove and some pepper in here and some ginger, but to me, it just smells dark and it smells earthy, just like that kind of anthracite in the name. And actually it reminds me a little bit of the old school days where you'd take your pencil and you'd actually use the sharpener. That's kind of what it reminds me of. I'm acting like kids don't still use sharpeners. But it just kind of reminds me of that friction burn from the metal and the wood in the pencil and the kind of graphite. So that's what it really reminds me of. But I think it smells extremely unique, and it reminds me a little bit of that smoky birch and Aventus and the kind of smoke in there. So that's kind of what it reminds me of, but it smells a little bit more spicy and a little bit less fresh and citrusy than Creed Aventus, and it smells a little bit more unique. But I think this is definitely unique enough to get your nose on. And if you don't want to spend a ton of money for the full bottle, you can always get one of these little, I think these are what, 10 ml? Yeah, little 10 ml travel atomizer for a decent price. And I feel like this is a cult classic because if you go on Fragrantica, there are a ton of people who love and swear by this fragrance, and I kind of wish they'd bring it back. And that one is Tom Ford Noir Anthracite. So next up is a fragrance from good old Yves Saint Laurent. Please pardon my fingerprints on the top, as you all know that the cap is a fingerprint magnet, but this one is Yves Saint Laurent's L'Homme Ultime. So I think this is one of the best flankers of Yves Saint Laurent's L'Homme. L'Homme was fantastic on its own, but I think the way that they just ramp up the ginger and they add a little bit of a fresh aromatic twist to it, I think this is one of their best fragrances, and I don't know why they pulled it. Like, I absolutely love the salty, kind of musky opening in this, especially with the ginger, the grapefruit, and some of those musks, but oh my gosh, this stuff is heavenly. And I love that there's a lot more rose in this and some of the other aromatics that they use in here, but I think this is a 10 out of 10 fragrance. And I actually kind of have a funny story about this bottle. I remember I was searching on Mercari for a L'Homme Ultime bottle. I had the notifications on, so I'd be notified if any of the names popped up for this, but I remember somebody had listed this as the regular Yves Saint Laurent L'Homme, but in the picture it was L'Homme Ultime, so either they didn't know what they had or they just didn't name it properly. Either way, I was super happy and I've been wearing this stuff ever since. And also, if y'all are looking for a good alternative to this for around $20 to $30, it's a Middle Eastern fragrance brand. I have a video where I talked about this particular fragrance and you can check that out up here. So again, if you want something very similar, check this one out. But again, this is a 10 out of 10 fragrance and it's one of my favorites from Yves Saint Laurent, and that one is L'Homme Ultime. Next up is Yves Saint Laurent's L'Homme Libre. So this definitely takes the same vetiver DNA of the original L'Homme and it adds quite a bit of green freshness to it. So you have a lot of violet leaf, you have some basil, and you have some other kind of sweet notes to it. I think you also have some nutmeg or some other spices, but really this does make a little bit more of a green aromatic version of L'Homme. You just get a really nice peppery vegetal quality from this one, and as you kind of wear this and as it projects off your skin, you definitely notice quite a lot the violet leaf in here. So it definitely smells a little bit iris-like, but it has, again, that green quality to it. Which actually leads me into my next fragrance that we're looking at. This one is ermenegildo Zegna's Uomo. So this fragrance was relatively cheap back in the day. I remember I got this one for about $12 or so in the rack stores, and you can still find it for about $30 or so if you know where to look online. There's definitely a little bit of stock still out there, so if you want something very similar to this without maybe a little bit of that sweetness in the opening, and if you want something that still smells like that violet and that just nice classy masculine vibe, go for this one. I actually think I prefer this one a little bit because it smells a little bit more salty, a little bit musky, and you definitely have some amber in there. Yeah, I feel like this one definitely ramps up the strength in the opening, and if you want something that's a little bit more musky, a little bit more ambroxan heavy in the opening, I think you're gonna like this one. It's just a little bit more salty, and again, just a cheaper alternative to the L'Homme Libre. And that one is ermenegildo Zegna's Uomo. And last but not least, we're saving the best for last, one of my most prized fragrances that I have in my collection that is discontinued. This is Roja Fetish. So this bottle is just absolutely outstanding. There's just something so dark, animalistic, and feral about this juice. It smells absolutely incredible. Like, if you want a sweet, spicy, boozy beast of a fragrance, I think this is gonna be right up your alley. If you were like me at the start of my fragrance journey and only prefer the blue, fresh, aquatic fragrances, you're gonna probably not like this one. This isn't for the faint of heart. This one starts off with a really nice salty lime in the opening. You also have some spice and some warmth from the leather and the cinnamon, but you also have some castoreum in here, which is definitely going to give it that animalistic, almost fecal touch. But it doesn't overdo it to the point where it smells like a barnyard or just like a horse's ass. This is not gonna smell like that. There are definitely those fragrances, and this is not that. This smells like somebody who's got their shit together. They're the CEO, they have the expensive watch, they drive the fancy cars, and oh my God, I am describing Jeremy fragrance. But if you want something with a nice bit of boozy citrus up top, with a nice animalistic leather, and definitely some depth to it and some power, check this one out. And that one is Roja Fetish. So that does it. Some discontinued fragrances from my collection. A lot of these have been sitting and kind of collecting dust, but I think this video was kind of fun because it gave me a chance to check out some of the ones that I haven't really picked up in a long time, and I don't know, they feel kind of like the toys that are left out, you know? But anyways, let me know in the comments if you have any discontinued fragrances that are some of your favorites. This isn't, you know, engagement bait, as I heard somebody else say on another video. I genuinely want to know some of your fragrances that you have in your collection that you just can't live without, that are for some reason discontinued. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing week. I've been Eli with Common Sense. Until the next time, bye-bye. Next up is some